Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is a good day. I'm going to give you a cloud picture to look at. You don't have to look at my mug. And we are going to be talking about the Lori Vallow Daybell and the Chad Daybell initial appearance that went on today in the 7th Judicial District of the state of Idaho. That's Fremont County. They had their initial appearance today. For some reason, we all kind of thought that it was going to be the arraignment, maybe because they're already in jail. I don't know why we all seemed to think it was going to be the arraignment. It was the initial appearance. And at the initial appearance, basically the judge would go over with the defendant, reviewing their rights, the charges against them, whether they're going to stick with the counsel they currently have, the dates, the mandatory charges if they're found guilty, the kind of time they could be looking at. And so that is what we're going to discuss. So the first defendant up was Chad Daybell, who is represented by John Pryor, and John Pryor intends to stay with Chad Daybell with these extra charges, at least for now. The court went over with Chad that the first count, he could get the death penalty for it, and if it's not sought by the state, life. And this is if he's found guilty of the charge. And life in this case would be 10 years mandatory, and it can go up. So that's the lowest. The second part of the count, he could catch 14 years. Again, that's a mandatory minimum. There's no wiggle room when the word shall is involved. So we're looking at 24 years on count one, mandatory minimum. Second count, all right? Again, it's a death penalty charge. If the state opts not to go for it and goes for life, takes death penalty off the table, goes for life. Life in this case is 10 years at the lowest, all right? It can always go up due to discretion. And also the second part of that charge is another 10 years. So we're looking at 20 years on count two. Count three, 13 years. Same thing. It could be a death penalty charge, but if death is taken off the table, life is 13 years. Count four is first degree murder of Tammy. Another death penalties on the table for this one. If the state takes it off the table, he could get life. Life in this case is 10 years mandatory minimum. Again, could go up. Same thing with count five, the conspiracy regarding Tammy's death. Death penalties on the table for this one as well. If they take it off, he could get life. That's a mandatory of 10 years. Again, I'm not bringing up there's also charges. You could have restitution and things like that. So there's other charges that, monetary issues that I'm not discussing. Count six. Again, death penalty or life imprisonment being 10 years. Count seven is not applicable to Chad. Count eight is the insurance fraud. That's a mandatory minimum of 15 years and also has some money involved. And again, count nine, also insurance fraud, mandatory minimum 15 years. So there's no death penalty involved with the insurance fraud. But if you can add that up, you've got 24 years on count one, you've got 20 years on count two, 13 years on count four, I believe, or 10 years. Yeah, 10 years on count five, 10 years on count six, 30 years between counts 8 and 9. Even if they took the death penalty off the table and only gave him the mandatory minimum charges, there is no way that he would again see the sunlight as a free individual unless he was given the time to run concurrent versus consecutive. The judge did mention that, of course, these charges are still up to be concurrent or consecutive, but considering that this is multiple murders that he's being accused of, they would run one after the other. So let's say in a world that felt pity or didn't, felt a defendant that was found guilty shouldn't get the maximum, he still would never see the light of day. I do believe that the state of Idaho is not, they do have the death penalty. I don't feel that they favor the death penalty like, say, my state does. So even if they were to go very, very soft on him, the mandatory minimums will ensure that he will die in prison. So, just to let you know, the only way that he could get around this is if he's found not guilty on some of these charges. So Chad is scheduled to be arraigned on June 9th, 2021, wherein he will be present and he will stand up. He will have these charges right in front of him, and he will plead to these charges, more than likely either not guilty or guilty. If he pleads guilty, one would hope that he has made an agreement with the government that he'd be pleading guilty to get the death penalty off the table, in which case there won't be a trial. Okay, he will just go to prison under whatever their agreement is. Or he could plead guilty without an agreement, and the judge will look at his statements and he will have to recite what he did, and then the judge will later sentence him. So that's what we have to look forward to with Chad. Right now, he's not got bail. They didn't ask for bail. I'm sure they knew it would be denied out of hand. Next up on the docket was Lori Vallow Daybell. She was represented by Mark Means. And strangely enough, so this was just very odd. So we're here at this first appearance, and she's in, I thought it was a blue hospital gown, but I think people have corrected me that it was the same light blue sweater that she's worn previously. But regardless, apparently there's been a stay on her case, and so strangely enough, there's going to be to be determined. This initial appearance has been put off. They didn't tell us why. They both parties seem to know what's going on to some extent. The state did not want to have a stay. They objected to it, but the judge agreed and let them have the stay. He did ask Means if he was going to file a notice of appearance to represent Lori Vallow, because he said it was his intention to stay on. He said, "Oh, I'll get around to that." That, you know, these are new charges, and so he needs to be the attorney on record in the case. So he needs to file that notice of appearance. It's a real simple piece of paper. You just file it in saying, "Hey, I'm her attorney, blah, blah, blah." Because I guess she's indigent now, so that's another factor. But it's fine. It's fine. Basically, there's a continuance now of her initial appearance. So what Chad just went through, where she would have the charges read out in front of her, they're pretty much similar charges to the ones Chad had, except for a little bit different with the death of Tammy and the insurance fraud. It's slightly different, but the same kind of concept, where you have the death penalty charges. The first degree murder charges are death penalty qualified, and then basically you could get life if the state took them off the table, in which case you get those, again, 10-year requirements, mandatory minimum. So she would be essentially facing generally around the same amount of mandatory time as Chad if she's found guilty on these charges. If the state doesn't take the death penalty off the table, I mean, that's up for grabs. But again, it's Idaho. I don't feel like that they're really a death penalty loving state. And also, they usually take the family's consideration into account. If the family isn't fond of the death penalty, usually they also take that into account. So right now, we don't know what's going on with Lori. You know what? You want to know what my opinion is, guys? This is just my opinion. The court had said very clearly that any kind of deal making had to be on the record. All of it. Even talking about making a deal had to be on the record. I haven't seen anything file into that other case about them making a deal yet. Maybe I'm wrong. So I think people think that there's a deal in the works. I think that Lori's unwell. That's my opinion. I believe that Lori is mentally unwell and having trouble recognizing something mentally, and that's why. If you cannot recognize the charges against you, the cannot recognize your rights, and maybe even understand the depth of what you're up against. If you're unwell, you have to wait until the person is well in order to continue. And that is just my speculation. I could be completely wrong. I've heard some really wild things that she's pregnant. I don't think, unless she's Mother Mary, that little Lori's pregnant. This is, people go wild with their speculations. It could be that there is some kind of deal in the making now that the new charges came down. But again, the court had been explicit about if there's any kind of plea bargaining or anything like that, that it needed to be on the record. I didn't see anything on the record. So I'm defaulting to that she is not well, in which case they will have to wait until she is made well to stand trial. I know that there is no official insanity defense in Idaho, but basically you still need to be sane, essentially. There's different versions of how, insanity. You need to be able to recognize what you're up against. And I'm just thinking that something dire is going on with her. That's just my opinion. So we'll just have to wait on her, and I'll keep you updated. I hope you're having an excellent day. I hope the clouds make you feel better. I know you probably don't want to see my face. I don't want to see my face. And, let's just look to the heavens and say a prayer for the victims here. That is Joshua J.J. Vallow. That's Tylee Ryan. That is Charles. That is Tammy Daybell. And we send everybody all the love. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative, and leave your comments in the comment section below. Take care. Bye.